Okay, welcome to the AdaptX Podcast, where we have conversations with individuals building accessible businesses, advocating for inclusion, or excelling in adaptive sports. Today, I'm joined by Lacey Artemis, a neurodiversity and accessibility advocate, consultant, and speaker from Toronto, Canada. She is passionate about helping people and focuses on helping organizations, venues, and event organizers adapt their systems, spaces, and experiences to be more neuro-inclusive. Lacey, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to start with maybe how you pursued this career, combination of personal and professional experiences, but what were you particularly interested in growing up?
I have changed a lot since I was a kid, so I'm kind of in a whole different world now than I was. I was diagnosed as autistic in my late 20s, so I kind of lived most of my adult life with like knowing I was different, but not knowing why until I found that. When I was younger, I always knew that I was creative, and I tried to go to college for design, and I loved the classes that I was taking, things I was learning, but the professors made it pretty clear that it's really hard to make a living to support yourself as like a professional artist, and they were not wrong. So from a lot of the things that they were saying, I was like, okay, I don't want to end up hating this. I don't want to be miserable and broke my whole life. So I switched tracks and I went and got like a safe job. I went into accounting, which worked well with my autism. I did that for a long time, but I was never really like happy in it. It was just like, I'm good at this and it pays the bills. So, it's the quote unquote good enough job. But I just knew that I was capable of more and I wanted to do more. And last year in 2024, I finally broke away from that field. And I'd started to notice over the last few years that like I have sensory issues, as a lot of neurodivergent people do. And I was frustrated that a lot of venues and a lot of events were just completely not like conscious or considerate of that at all. So there'd be like music playing at a social event. I'm like, how am I supposed to talk to people and meet them and get to know them when I have to like yell to hear them? And like, different things with like lighting or sense or other things, like it just started to get really frustrating. And I was like, somebody needs to do something about this. Well, I guess I'm somebody. I guess I can do something about it. So I started to plan and run my own events with that in mind, of like finding venues that were quiet and that were like good lighting, like not too bright, not too dim, and like scent free and all these different things. And that I found out that running events itself is very difficult to make money from as well. But then kind of going further down that rabbit hole, I've gotten into like advocacy and consulting. And like that's a whole realm that I've stumbled into that I'm really like, there's a lot to dig into there. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, a few different directions and a few different kind of things that came to mind as you were responding there. Maybe before we dive into the career piece, because I think that will probably take up the bulk of the conversation and what you do now and how you make events more inclusive. What originally encouraged or led you to seek out a diagnosis in your late 20s, and maybe how did getting that label change things for you?
Yeah, so I still feel like whenever I tell it, like when I was aware of autism loosely because everyone kind of knows of Rain Man, or I don't know if Big Bang Theory was on TV at that time or not, but there was some cultural awareness of it, but it was the one very specific stereotype, and I didn't identify with that because it was like portraying a really extreme version of autism. And there's a lot of people that are like have much lower support needs and are much more functional, kind of day to day, can mask more easily. So I just stumbled upon an article on the internet one day, and I was reading it, and I was like, why do I identify with so much of this? Like, I have no idea where this has been. And so I kind of, the way that autistic people tend to be, we find a thing that catches our interest, and then it becomes like nothing else matters. This is all I'm going to care about for, however long. And so I really dove into that, and I went and saw my doctor, and he referred me, and I got assessed and diagnosed. And the biggest thing was just like, okay, so this explains my quirks and why I am the way that I am. and it kind of helps people understand what my sort of needs are and these different things. And I I didn't mention this in the introduction because there's so many things to say, but I did have to mask at work, and I was kind of consistently told whenever the topic came up, it was like, don't disclose because more than likely it's going to be used against you, or you're gonna get discriminated, or you're gonna get held back, or whatever. And I didn't want that, obviously, so I just did my best to suck it up and be quiet and just do my work. And it took a lot out of me to do all that masking, and it got to the point where I couldn't really do that anymore, which is why I left that field. But that's kind of the other part of the consulting I do. Is not just around events, but I also want to consult with organizations to help their neurodivergent staff, because to tie into what you have talked about on the show before, it shouldn't just be a matter of thinking of like, oh, well, it's a charity thing, like, oh, we're being nice to our neurodivergent staff. Like, if you actually support them, because we're capable of quite like better output, faster output, more quality output when we're supported properly. And if it falls to us to do that, it's just not going to be as good. So
Yeah. What were the specific strengths that you possess that made you effective at bookkeeping? Because I think that's good evidence of leveraging strengths over maybe relative or perceived weaknesses to perform really well at a specific job.
Uh, I feel like my autism is kind of like this designated driver in my brain that it's kind of just there, like looking over things. And
Mm.
so I can't help that when I look at, like, if I look at a stack, like I'm compelled to organize things,
Mm.
which is kind of weird because I'm also ADHD. And so I'm also very like kind of organized, messy. I'm very creative. I have like my ideas blow up and become these disasters in a sense. But like ultimately I gravitate towards making order out of chaos, and that's not very common in the artistic world, which is why it's always been like, oh, like I'm the artist friend that actually can keep things like herd the cats, so to speak. I was just good at it, and it felt good to do that to an extent. I mean, I didn't, like I said, I didn't want to be, bookkeeping forever. It wasn't like a passion. It was just something I did get some dopamine from being good at.
Yeah, and it's a means to an end, right? Like sustainability and socioeconomic considerations are always really relevant for career choice too. One thing I personally a little bit of friction point maybe for my gym or my career in the fitness space, and you alluded to it in the first question, is just designing a space that I know isn't going to be suitable for everyone. You come into my gym, and the premise of our business is to allow people with and without disabilities to seamlessly coexist. But maybe that environment isn't perfect for everyone, and there's music playing and there's lights. Are there certain environments that maybe can't be neuro-inclusive? Or if you were advising me on how to make a gym space more accessible or inclusive for someone like yourself, and I guess what steps do you think I should take to better support people with neurodiversity?
So one of the first things that comes to mind, one of my primary struggles is sound sensitivity, which I have the double-edged sword of having both auditory processing disorder and tinnitus. But so I need to, like, it's harder for me to hear to begin with, but because I'm also sensitive to noise, I tend to wear earplugs. So I'm kind of like fighting two opposite fights at the same time. But whenever I go to venues and they have like solid brick walls, and they have all like the steel beams and tubes and HVAC system and stuff, like all those like hard flat surfaces reflect sound like completely. And when you have like 50 or more people all talking at once in a space like that, it's just it's a frequency nightmare. And like that's the kind of case where like I can be standing in a group and I will literally only be able to hear the people directly beside me and no one else, because it's just there's too much and I can't filter it. And that's the thing I think I run into the most often, is just environments that are too loud and there's like no consideration. Like I know everybody, like most people like music, and I get that venues want to have music playing because it's gonna be a lot of people don't like silence, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
But it's just a thing that like I know that a lot of people don't even think twice about, and it's really frustrating to walk into a space and just immediately know like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna have to be at like, I'm gonna have to be filtering all these things just to like exist in this space and interact with people and to try to have this experience. And the whole time it's like eating away at my energy more than anybody else. And this is why like I'm starting to do some research now, because I know it's not just neurodivergent people that have some of these struggles. Like introverts hate loud environments too. Introverts aren't necessarily neurodivergent. They can be, they don't have to be. So I'm trying to start gathering data to find out what of these factors can impact anyone regardless of their neurology. Because I need to be able to bring that data forward and be like, hey, I'm not just asking for special treatment. I'm saying like, this is something that's affecting the majority of your patrons. So it's worth thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to come into my gym for the first time and say, hey, like Brendan, I'm interested in joining this gym. I identify as neurodivergent. I have these sensitivities to sound. I think my first question would be like, well, one, when were you hoping to work out? Are you morning, middle of the day, afternoon? And then for me, it would be like, okay, well, our gym is pretty busy first thing in the morning, and then in the afternoon it picks back up again. But there's these quiet periods in the middle of the day, and you kind of see some other companies. I know Walmart got a lot of recognition for adding like sensitivity hours or sensory friendly hours from like 10 to 12, but those times don't work for most people shopping if they have a job, etc. So I guess would your preference be to come to the gym when there's really no one else there? Would you want to come when it is lively, but maybe you would wear noise canceling headphones or something along those lines? In which case, then if I was coaching you, we would just have to come up with a different communication method. If I'm not able to call across the gym and get your attention or kind of have a verbal conversation, maybe we would have more written communication or some sort of iPad or assistive technology type of thing. But yeah, I guess what would make the gym experience the best for you if you were to come?
So the first thing that comes to mind, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think at this point in time, like most people have their own headphones and they're probably listening to their own thing when they're
Yeah.
working out. So if there is still going to be music playing in the broader gym, I guess maybe for the staff that can't wear headphones
Mhm.
because they have to be able to pay attention to customers or clients, then like one of the things that you could do is have the like general gym music kept to a certain like volume or lower, and alternatively I would say have only like instrumental or ambient music, like or something that doesn't have like percussion and vocals, like something that's easier to kind of fall to the background. Having potentially a bit more like maybe sound dampening um, materials in different places. Or I know this one's a little bit more going out of your way, but if you can have like a separate area or designated area, I mean, maybe if you have like, if there's like a yoga studio and it's not currently being used for yoga classes, then go in there, have no music in there, and just have that be kind of the space that, because I would be most likely to come in kind of first thing in the morning, and I
Mhm.
know that that's one of the busiest times.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the maybe one piece that's a little unique about our gym is that it is kind of like a training gym. So pretty much everyone who comes in gets some degree of coaching, which means actually that not many of our clients wear headphones
Okay.
because there's more communication between coaches and clients. So I definitely understand commercial gym. You go in and everyone's kind of in their own world doing their own thing, and they're probably wearing their headphones and all that stuff. And so in that case, the ambient background music, stuff like that, would definitely be um, advisable. I guess just for me, I struggle with the idea of wanting to be inclusive, wanting to create these integrated sessions where people with and without disabilities can kind of coexist, but at the same time being considerate of people that do need maybe one to one or do need kind of an empty gym to be successful.
One other small thing that you could do, it's a very small thing, it makes a small difference, but if you have like a large enough space and maybe if you have the speakers sort of kind of at the midpoint, but they're pointing distinctly towards one end of the gym and away from the other. That does help a little bit, because sometimes I go into a venue and all of the speakers are pointed like straight down or straight center. So there's nowhere to go that has like less of that sensory input. But if they're kind of more, the back is louder, the front's quieter, something like that, that's a little thing that can help. It's just a suggestion that I have.
Do you believe that all venues and events should be taking these things into consideration and should be neuro-inclusive, or do you think there's certain environments and activities where it might not be possible?
I know some venues would be harder. Like I understand like a sports bar maybe is a place like I avoid those because they're just typically too loud.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a TV on with the game, and like they don't have to have the play-by-play going. People can still watch it, but I think for like places like just kind of maybe like cafes or like, again, I get that people kind of like to have a little bit of background music on a lot of the time, but um, it doesn't have to be as loud, or maybe with like, again, speaker orientation, like direction, or having just a little bit more sound dampening panels, or like padded furniture, or thing. There are different things that can just help to soften it a little bit more. But yeah, I know the sound is the trickier one, I think.
But I think those are good recommendations, right? Because they're pretty low cost, low, not very invasive, right? Because I think a lot of people assume that they have to drastically overhaul either their services or their environments if they're going to support a different population than they were doing beforehand. So I do like the practicality of those recommendations.
I think one of the other things that comes to mind, and I'm not an expert in this by any stretch, but I have been a musician for multiple decades, and so I do have an understanding of sort of like the frequency spectrum. And it just popped into my auditory memory of like the sound of, if you're in a cafe and they're running like a grinding machine to like make an espresso or something, and just it's like, I know it's probably not necessarily possible for them to like, put some kind of soundproofing around that, but like when you're sitting near the thing, if you're like talking to a friend or on a date or something, and all just like right next to you, it's like, why do we have to do this? There's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I think those small things a lot of businesses can benefit from, and I think too often they're not considered because the people that operate them don't really have the lived experiences. So that's where like the consultancy thing that you mentioned comes into play. And I was interested when you said you were hosting events, why you opted to go your own events versus working with pre-existing events to make them more neuro-inclusive. So maybe could you start with explaining kind of what the events you hosted were like, and then maybe, I know you're transitioning more into the consultancy side, so let's maybe talk about what you do for that.
Yeah. So when I kind of first started, there was this one particular event that is like a kind of a social mixer. It's meant to like meet new people, make new connections, find people that have similar interests, and be friends. And it's unfortunately held in one of those venues that's like all hard, flat surfaces, and like the beams and the HVAC overhead. So it's just a terrible auditory, like, reverb and all that stuff. It's terrible, but I love the event itself. And I said to the organizer, like, I've approached event organizers in the past to like kind of help them, work with them, because I wanted to get more into events anyways. And surprisingly, a lot of them have been like, oh, we don't really need help, or like, oh, various, polite deflections or rejections. And I kind of was like, okay, people don't seem to really want or need help apparently. So I guess I'm just, again, it came back to like, I'm not getting anywhere by trying to go to other people. So I think I just need to like take initiative and do what I want to do. So I started with doing like a social connection event, and the venue I used was one of the more affordable ones I found, and it still wasn't great for reverb and such. But from there, I shifted into doing where I call them place-based workshops. And so it's a series of activities. There's like improv, there's arts and crafts, there's like just kind of interacting with other people and kind of like getting to know them a little bit. So it's kind of a mixture. It's a little bit of skill building, a little bit of like just creativity, a bit of networking. And like this is the sort of thing I want to exist more of, because it doesn't really exist nearly as much as I think it should. And so I started doing that. And like, again, if I'm doing this and I'm having these quieter environments and I'm having these different, like, it's not taking away from anybody's experience, it's just becoming more accessible. And that was kind of the other point too, is to give more experience, to make them more accessible. And like I said, I kind of ran a couple of those and I found it's just really, if you're trying to like make your living from running independent events, it's, at least in this current time, like with our current economic situation and such, it's not very viable, I don't think. So that's why, part of why I started shifting towards the consulting, because it's like if I'm just focusing on this one tiny little sliver of accessibility in just certain kinds of events, that's cutting, selling myself short. So I don't know if I answered all your questions there.
No, yeah, but I think also as you were speaking, I was thinking like, so if a business hires you to make their environment and their experience more neuro-inclusive, they would want to understand like the value of that investment, I guess. So
Yeah.
being able to articulate to that business, like, these are how many people with various neurodiversities are not coming to your facility because of this. And if you make these two small changes, etc., like all these people might be patrons. But then I think there's going to still be a presumption from people who are neurodivergent, like sports bar is not the place for me. So then that sports bar, I guess the next challenge or hurdle is marketing themselves as neuro-inclusive, or that they're taking these initiatives to be more inclusive. So I think that's maybe one of the steps that's sometimes missed, is like the promotion or the invitation of people with disabilities into facilities after they make those steps. It's not just like a build it and they will come type of thing. Like sometimes people with disabilities need to be invited, at least in my experience, because they have these assumptions that these spaces aren't built for them.
Yeah, I can say from my experience that I'm in a few different online communities around, whether it's just sort of broadly more, whether it's specifically neurodivergent related, or if it's more just broadly disabilities / invisible disabilities. And there is some talk of like, I've brought it up before and other people have kind of agreed like, oh yeah, this venue is terrible for noise, or it's too bright, or it's too dark, or whatever. And I have been in touch with a couple of other local organizations to try to start building a database of what venues I have found that I like, that I think are good or well suited. I'm in plans to start going to different venues to kind of broach this more formally, and that's part of why I'm collecting this data, because I want to say like, I'm not just trying to ask for special treatment. I'm trying to like say, because there are times like somebody might come into your gym or come into any business and just be like, hey, I don't know if you were aware of this, but like they might say, your website has a broken link on it. And you'd be like, oh, cool, like thanks for letting me know. I didn't know, and I can fix that easily. I could say like, hey, just in case you didn't know, you could implement this one small little change. It would make it a little bit better for 80% of your patrons or something. Like, I know I have to approach it that way, or they're just going to be like, get out of here, stop walking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's too bad that you have to advocate for the value of the advocacy, but it is important, I guess, as I can see both sides of the coin as a disability advocate, but also as a business owner. You do have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the sustainability of your business too. But you do a lot of public speaking as well, and I saw that on one of your signature talks is labeled Fish and Trees. Can you elaborate maybe a bit on where that title came from and what topics you cover in that presentation?
Yeah, so that's taken from a quote that has been attributed to Albert Einstein, but may or may not have actually originally been his. And the quote basically says, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And the idea there is basically the first way, everyone is a genius. Everyone has their talent, their abilities, their strengths. But, we have this thing called the social model of disability, where disabled people aren't disabled because of their limitation, quote unquote. They're disabled because of the way that other people treat them and what they assume they can and can't do, or tell them that they can and can't do. Like, a person in a wheelchair can do a lot of things, but if you just have stairs and no ramp, then you're the one that's limiting them, not them. It's not their limitation. And so that's kind of, this is looking more specifically at the neurodivergent side of it, but that I've always loved that quote, and just that idea of like fish in trees is it's a catchy, it sticks in people's mind, because like you think, why would a fish be doing in a tree? And so I kind of went with that for now. It may change, but that's the title that I'm working with right now, for just trying to present this idea to businesses, organizations, of like that idea of everyone has strengths, everyone brings something, whether it's like a skill or whether it's ROI or it's innovation, team mood, all these things. And it's just that these people are just not being, if you're leaving them to support themselves, it's you're missing out on opportunity, essentially. And this is a thing that I dealt with in my own career, and part of why I just got so fed up and I was like, I can't deal with this anymore, because my last two jobs that I worked in, 15 plus years experience in this field, and I had two jobs in a row where I was treated like a 5-year-old, and they didn't care about my experience. It's like, you're not senior, you're whatever, and so this is how we're telling you this has to be done. And it doesn't matter if I'm saying there's a better way, or this is inefficient, or why. Like, it's just like, no, this is what we're telling you to do, this is how you do it, don't ask questions, stop being a pain. And it was like, I I deserve better than this, like, what the hell. So it's trying to really put that idea forward of like, you're saying there is a business case for it. There's better retention, there's better productivity, innovation, um, you know, all these, like, there's so many factors, and I have to pull the data together to really drive that home. But, like, I know it, but I just have to be able to prove it to them. So, yeah.
Well, I think the Fish and Trees is a great title. I think when you just look at corporate like disability erg presentations, or just people in general that do a lot of public speaking, you pretty much see the same jargon, the same titles, kind of just reworded or recycled. So I think something that stands out is great. And I think if you lead with that quote, I think it really sets the precedent for what the like point you're trying to get across. So I personally like it. How do you prepare for your presentations, and kind of what do you hope that the audience gets from listening to you speak?
I prepare usually by going over a few times to it's partly lived experience and partly like my own research and talking to other people. So, because I'm speaking both about my experience, and I'm also trying to represent a broader community, and of course the disabled community more broadly, because I do consider myself hard of hearing as well, and I have an intermittent knee issue that periodically I have to use a cane or brace for. So I do actually draw from multiple different forms of disability. So I try to remember that, and my goal is ultimately like education, and to to find the people that, like, because as I said, when I was younger, I was really awkward, and I was very, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was ignored a lot, and so to have reached the point where I am a strong, confident speaker, and I can give a voice to people that are not able to advocate for themselves, like, that's a thing that I take seriously, and I try to use that, try to do them justice. So I'm trying to, like, and there's people that are out in the crowds. I was just interviewing somebody the other day. It was like, I don't know if it's fair for me to, like, self-diagnose, and like that's been a big debate in the community as well. And the circles that I run in, self-diagnosis is very welcome, because we're gaslit so much in the society about like what we can experience is or isn't. So if there's people in the crowd who are maybe kind of doubting, or like me back when I found that article, like they didn't know, and now that they've heard someone put this into words, like, oh wow, okay, I need to know more about this because that resonated with me, and where's this been my whole life? So there's just a lot of opportunity to do good with it, and I take that seriously, and I'm very honored that I get to do this now.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of juxtaposition, right? Because one of the maybe misconceptions, or maybe in many cases it is accurate, is that individuals with autism or different levels of neurodivergence might not be strong public speakers or have as strong a verbal expressive language. So for you to be able to, like you said, kind of not speak on their behalf, but at least stand up and give the greater community as a whole a voice is really useful. So was there a particular presentation or kind of experience that stands out to you, whether for positive or negative reasons?
So far I've had really positive responses. I've been kind of refining this because I've kind of been, I guess, on a path towards this for years, and it's really coalesced in the last kind of year or two. So now I'm really getting like a razor focused and like a heat-seeking missile for what I'm really trying to do. And so I've been working with an agent, and I've got several things coming up this fall and into next year. So if we have a check back in a year from now, I'm sure I would have a lot more stories to share with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope we will. Since a lot of my work does revolve around fitness and physical activity, outside of maybe some of the stuff that we talked about earlier, are there ways that you think the entire gym experience, or maybe actually, because it's kind of top of mind for me right now, we're organizing a lot of road races. Are there ways that we could make the road race experience, if you're familiar with attending an event like that, more neuro-inclusive?
Again, the thing that tends to come to mind first for me is anything that's sort of like sound or noise related. And I know being outdoors, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for ambient car noise or dogs barking or whatever. And usually if it's possible, earplugs or earmuffs for like, that's one of the other things too, is like in some of these cases, I'm not going to go tell like venues like, oh, you should have a bunch of earmuffs on you can give out to, like, no, they'll bring their own. But like,
that's what I was going to ask. Like, is that something where it should just kind of be assumed that the patron or the participant is going to take the steps that they need to be comfortable? Or
I mean, to an extent, but so I think there's responsibility on both sides. Like I said, I tend to wear earplugs or something like that to events, or I have these. Your listeners won't be able to see it, but I'll show you. These are they're clear framed red lens. They're not prescription glasses, but they're basically like glasses with red lenses in them, and they're blue blocking glasses. And I wear those when I'm really tired or if I have a headache or a migraine, because otherwise it's just, the light just kills me. So I have those, and I have special musicians earplugs as well, which I wear to like events that I know are going to be louder. But the conjunction of, if I'm going to wear earplugs and the venue's also going to like turn their volume down to like, say, like 40 or 50 decibels instead of like 80 or 90, whatever, that's going to help on both sides. I think if it's all pushed onto, it's like if you force neurodivergent people to do all of the masking, like, figure it out, you deal with it, it's your problem. Like, either we're not going to come back, we're going to have a terrible time, we're going to like rate the event or the venue poorly, or we're just not even going to go. Because I've gone to things before and I get to the front door and I'm like, it's just so, I can hear it, I'm like, I cannot handle this environment tonight, I'm too tired, and I'll go back home. And that's disappointing and frustrating, and I don't want that to happen. So I think there are small adjustments that can be made, and like more understanding on both sides. Like I said, I don't expect venues to just spend thousands of dollars to completely overhaul everything. That's not realistic either.
Yeah, maybe just kind of simply asking, whether it's during like a a sign up process or having something on the website that says like if you could benefit from any specific accommodations or support needs, like reach out to us. Because I guess like I don't know what I don't know, and if you just signed up for my race and didn't have any means of expressing I have these sensitivities until you show up that morning, and then you're like, wait, I guess it would just be a little more helpful from an organizational standpoint to kind of know some of these stuff, like some of these things ahead of time, I guess.
Yeah, I did arrange an event probably about a year and a half ago at this one particular venue, and I was speaking to the manager directly over email, and I was like, just so you know, like we want this to be quieter. It was on a Sunday morning, so like I didn't expect the venue to be super busy anyways, but I was like, like to have the music either really low or like off, and he said, I I assure you, I'll let staff know it won't be a problem. And I got there, and the music was still kind of like what I felt like was a normal volume. And I went to the bartender, and I was like, "Hey, I was told that the music would be kept lower," and I think she turned the volume down like one tick or something. And like, come on, like I didn't want to fight about it, so I just like left it. But I was like, that's the sort of thing that this is why I want to go in and like bring like data and bring a business case for it. Like I'm
Yeah.
not saying it has to be the worst. Like there's compromises that we can do, I think.
Yeah. What type of companies and events are you particularly interested in working with if there was someone listening that kind of wanted to seek out your services or learn more?
One of the organizations I'm in touch with right now, I'm a member of a couple of Canadian Chamber of Commerce groups, and then there's the Canada, in case people, I don't know if I sound Canadian or not. Oh, you said, yeah, Toronto, Canada, in my intro. But there's here in Ontario, the province that I live in, there's an organization called the Ontario Queer Chamber of Commerce, and I've been talking to them for a few months about doing the place-based workshops, but also talking about just the other kind of ways to make things a bit more accessible. And like I said, I kind of started on the lowest level with this, with like individual local events, and I'm starting to see like kind of the bigger picture, and that this isn't just a local thing, it's not just a province thing, it can be national, international. So I'm trying to get in contact with more of these like larger organizations, banks, like maybe larger accounting firms that have more like reach and more staff to see a larger benefit from these accommodations. So that's what I'm trying to. I'm trying to do both local and larger scale, I guess.
Yeah. We can include direct links in the show notes, but if there was someone that wanted to kind of reach out and learn more about your services, is there a best place for them to go to?
Yeah, my website is laceyartemis.com. You can also go to fishandtrees.com. That does link to a subpage on my website. And I am also on almost all the social media platforms as Lacey Artemis. I'm not on Twitter anymore, or X now, but otherwise I have presence everywhere. Not super active on everything, but yeah, that was kind of a thing. I wanted to try to make myself findable, to make sure that I can help people. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we definitely encourage anyone that wants to make their work and their environments and their services more neuro-inclusive to seek out the work that you do, or even I know there's some publicly available talks that you've done that I was able to listen to beforehand. So interviews that you've had as well. So I really appreciate you reaching out and joining us for an episode and kind of getting the opportunity to learn from you, and even getting a little bit of advice from you as to how we can operate our gym to make it more neuro-inclusive. I really appreciate it.
yeah, and I will also mention this. I'm about to start a new sort of blog type series where I'm going to be writing about this stuff more specifically. I'm planning to go to venues and kind of talk to them, and to, I guess, give a little bit of, so that people don't always have to come necessarily seek me out to do like I could put some of this information out there so that people can get some of it more easily.
Yeah.
So that'll be on LinkedIn and perhaps my Substack as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely include show note links in the show notes to your different channels so people can easily find it. But Lacey, again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the AdaptX podcast. Our effort to amplify the ideas of our guests and create more inclusive and accessible industries is futile unless these episodes reach a larger audience. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please leave us a rating or a review on whichever platform you use. And if you would like to learn more about AdaptX, the course that we teach to health and fitness professionals and the projects that our organization is working on, you can subscribe to our newsletter through our website, www.adaptx.org. Until next Monday.